Everybody, welcome into the Sideline Fantasy pregame show, week 3 of the football season, fantasy football season. I am here with my good old co-host, Crimmy Charles, and we are two totally different teams so far on the year. He's 2-0, I'm 0-2, so not looking the greatest for the back-to-back champ, but overall, 2 weeks in, how are we feeling so far?
Pretty good. I obviously thought I had a decent team, but the whole Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins thing is going much better than I expected.
Yeah, it's been a big tandem for you so far, and it's always hard to tell, and we're gonna kind of probably talk over that, during this show we have. It's hard to gauge, the first couple weeks of the season. Sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks to really get a good understanding of running back committees, who's doing what, this and that. It's challenging, and that's what makes fantasy fun. But overall, we are going to break down all the big signings this week, see what went down on the waiver wire. No trades yet. No trades. And when Krim do you start expecting to see those kind of more blockbuster big moves? Do you think they start happening after this week, or do we still have a little bit longer to go?
I think that after this week, people are going to look into them more so, I feel, just because once the waiver wire kind of dries up a little bit, I feel like that's getting to the point where you won't be spending 40, 50 points on certain people. And also, you're going to get into the tail end of your divisional play. So if you're playing these people, only once in the year and you lose, and you're already going to be, 0-3, 1-2, whatever the case is right now, it's kind of hard to dig yourself out of that hole. So I see them happening pretty soon.
Yeah, and there's always that hard choice of, am I panicking too early? Is my team fine if they just gotten off to a slow start? Or a lot of these players, is it not a slow start? Is it really truly how they're going to be this year? That's always that's always kind of the tough call you got to make when doing those calls and making those trades. But I agree. I think the trades should start ramping up here soon. A lot of guys still believe in their guys. It's still early, so not as much going down on the trade market as of yet. But who knows? Could just be a matter of time. A lot of people like their teams. But let's take a look, Crimson. As we will usually, we will break down the matchups, but we'll also break down the transactions for the week. As we mentioned, no trades, but let's take a look at the waiver wire. And this week, Jay was the big spender. What did you think about spending 46 on Mike Davis?
Obviously, when you have McCaffrey, it's tough to not want his backup. But if you look at it in a sense of the Panthers roster, last week they didn't have a third running back dressed, I don't believe. So I think that Mike Davis's volume was just because he was the only active running back, or at least the one they trusted. So I don't think that he'll get all that same work moving forward. But at the same time, it's a starting running back. Yours is gone, so you're gonna have to kind of bite the bullet there. So Jay's kind of the only guy I would see making a move like that.
Yeah, I somewhat understand it, but that's a hefty price just for securing the handcuff of McCaffrey. I think he could have been just as well getting a guy like Gaskin, and then guess what? When McCaffrey comes back, instead of having one starting running back, because Mike Davis would obviously fall back down in the depth chart, you'd have two. Because Gaskin's kind of proven he's going to be the main workhorse there. So I don't know. It was interesting to blow almost half your fantasy budget on the backup, but um, either way, it was a hefty price. He paid it. We'll see how it works out. He might have looked at it as kind of a desperation move. He needed a starting running back once McCaffrey went down. But you were the one that got Gaskin at 25, dropping Paris Campbell. And, Gaskin's already done for the week. He got his little play, did pretty well, 12 points on 22 carries, not the greatest rushing average, but has caught a few balls. I think he's caught 15 balls in the first 3 games. Did you like what you got for Gaskin at that price?
Yeah, I mean, I had two targets. Obviously, Gaskins being one of them, and the second one being the next guy we'll probably talk about. But I figure it's if you can get a guy who's going to get volume in an offense that's probably going to be behind a lot, he's going to get chances to do something, put up some sort of yardage or stat line. So, I mean, getting a guy like that and getting another starting running back, for that matter, in week 2 after kind of the first, waiver wire has been kind of pushed through. It's wouldn't say it's rare, but I mean 25 points. I didn't think I would actually get them, but here we are.
And you're actually, and to go back on the real quick, the Mike Davis thing, I'm going to correct myself here. I know McCaffrey's out, but it was actually Barkley that's on his team. He dropped Barkley for Mike Davis, so he's getting Mike Davis for the time being, who's not going to be a starter in 3 weeks, and that's why again that yeah, it's tough. That's a tough call there.
Yeah, I mean, it does certainly make it interesting. Obviously, I believe it was Justin that has McCaffrey. Then I'm pretty sure that's correct. So someone like that, losing him, like, and you're gaining Mike Davis. Is he going to be a guy you play every week? Probably not. But at the same time, like, you gain to see yourself a starting running back for at least. It wasn't Justin who has him. Whoever has him and didn't get him. That's essentially the bottom line of that. Jay got him. I think Tyler. Is it Tyler who had him? Yes.
Well,
just
there we go.
cannot
Third
remember
time's a
any. There we go.
charm.
Third time's a charm. Exactly. Tyler has him. He didn't get him, but last week Tyler did secure Malcolm Brown, so he didn't really, I guess, feel the need to throw in that much of a budget for McCaffrey's backup, and I feel like he made the right decision there, to be honest. Just because you have Malcolm Brown, he was hurt last week, but if you already have the guy, McCaffrey's going to miss 3 games. He'll likely be back for that. Once he comes back from IR, they're going to probably play him. They're not going to sit him after he's activated. So, you miss 3 games. You have Malcolm Brown for those 3 games. You have your replacement there. You don't have to kind of go out there and spend the money. So you kind of keep that for other things in case somebody else goes down or somebody else pops off or whatever. So he was already prepared to kind of take that blow, and here we are.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, Gaskin, the 2 running backs are the big ones, and that's a lot of what you're going to see early in the waiver wire period. And as you mentioned, that it'll run dry after a while until another big injury pops up, and that usually will make someone pretty sought after. But those first couple weeks, I mean, Gaskin wasn't picked up after week 1 where he had a decent amount of reps, and then after week 2, finally someone pulled the trigger there. James White was added by Chad for $21. Kyle added Darrell Henderson for 13. He added a little $2 on Ryan Tannehill. Chad added $2 on the Colts, and of course, Dave had to go get his boy Justin Herbie and dropped his former boy Rivers. So David Long is officially broken up with Philip Rivers. He's moved on in his life, and he's ready to go after that young stud stallion, Justin Herbert. But other than that, other than the ones we talked about, we got White, Henderson, a couple others. Nothing too pricey. Any of these other transactions you've seen the last few days, or anything that's kind of um, thought made you think differently on a certain team?
Yeah, I mean, outside of anything I've done, I kind of have my own method, my madness here. But I did like the pickup for Peter to play Gardner Minshew on Monday or Thursday Night Football, which we'll get into that when we get into the matchups. But that wasn't a bad pickup, and I do like Trey grabbing N'Keal Harry just because if you can kind of, as the year goes on, see Cam and N'Keal hook up more often, that can be kind of, a 1-2 punch that can be pretty crucial down the stretch.
18 targets in 2 games. He's not getting quite the yardage or, the touchdowns yet, but 18 targets in 2 games for N'Keal Harry with Cam Newton over there. So, yeah, that could be a sleeper pick as well. Let's yeah, so that's basically it on the transactions. Like I said, no big trades happening this week. A couple of the big dollar transactions, but we'll see if it starts heating up a little bit more next week. Let's take a look at the matchups. Krim, what's the first one up on your screen?
The first one I see is going to be my matchup.
So we got Peter, Pistol Pete Platoon versus Nuke Jukum, which is Crimmy himself. And as you mentioned, Peter did decide to start Minshew, who only got him 9 in a game that you really would have expected him to get more than 9 with the way he started his season and playing Miami. But you also started Chenault to kind of counter that, who only got 6. Now, obviously, you don't like the quarterback getting 9 at all, and you'd probably take that loss from your perspective with your receiver only getting 6. But you're still technically, according to projections, projected to lose by about a point here. What do you think about this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, yeah, the flex position giving you a total of 6 isn't fantastic, but like you said,
Especially
it was
when you have
more
Gaskin
so.
on your bench.
Yeah, it was more so to kind of balance. If Gardner had the big game, And hopefully Chenault's kind of on the other end of that thing, so I can kind of keep up. I don't want to kind of lose my week on Thursday. You really can't lose your week on Thursday. I
It's
mean,
a bad feeling when you do.
yeah,
Everyone's been there and done that where they've had 2 or 3 or 4 people
like
playing on Thursday, and it's a bad feeling to lose a week on a Tuesday or a Thursday. I'll say that.
I say you can't lose one. I mean, case in point, last week with the Browns, had Trey played, both Kareem and Nick Chubb, his opponent was probably just sitting there like, well, I guess this
Feeling
is
very defeated,
yeah. But yeah, no, I mean the matchup for me is solid for both of us actually. It's a pretty good matchup in regards to players. I mean, you have Aaron Jones capping it off Sunday Night Football against them. Same boys who are coming off a big loss to the Raiders. He's got Miles Sanders kind of getting himself into a situation where Chubb and Kareem ran wild last week against the Bengals. And he's got Cooper, he's got McLaurin, both in good matchups. I think on my side of things, too, I have solid matchups in Murray, Hopkins. Hawkinson is in a decent place where he can kind of get some work going. Zeke obviously is Zeke. So, like, the projections say I'm going to lose by, I believe, a point. Less than one whole point. So I wouldn't be surprised if it came down to that. I do think this one will be very, very close, but something to look at closely. I don't know obviously how this works out, but Darren Waller Q tag, Josh Jacobs also has a Q tag. I saw that earlier today. If one of those guys doesn't play, I presume both of them will play. But if Darren Waller does not play for Peter after putting up a monster week last week with 22 and a half, that's going to be something to look out for.
Yeah, and this is actually if you want to do the whole matchup of the week thing, this is probably the matchup of the week. I think this is the only can you still hear me, Krim?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. I think this is the only 2-0 versus 2-0 matchup of the entire week. And honestly, I like a lot of both matchups for the teams. Murray and Hopkins against Detroit, Zeke against Seattle. That Dallas Seattle game is supposed to be high scoring. Aaron Jones, Green Bay, New Orleans. That could be high scoring. Miles Sanders has been getting a lot of tick lately. Amari Cooper is going to be involved in that Dallas Seattle game. Godwin, Tampa Bay. So I think a lot of good matchups this week. I think this is the game of the week in regards to that. I think this is going to be a fun one. 2-2-0 teams going at it. One of them is going to stay undefeated, and one of them's not. And we'll see. Maybe the Minshew 9 is going to hurt Peter a lot because I think if Minshew didn't get that 9, I think Peter was projected for about 115, 116 on the week. So still projected to win it. Should be a close one. Definitely two of the better teams in the league there for sure. Moving on. What's the next matchup?
We have back to back and back again everybody's favorite 0-2 team
All
against
right.
Seafells, another 0-2 team. Battle of the bottom feeders here, folks.
Yeah, it is. And I believe this is the only 0-2 matchup. I think every other matchup is 1-1 or 1-1-2-0 or 0-2-1-1, whatever the case may be. So we have the first matchup we talked about was the only 2-0-2-0 matchup, and we got the bottom feeders here 0-2-0-2. I am projected to win this one. I do like some of the matchups. I always like having a guy going Monday night, none better than Lamar Jackson. Derrick Henry is going to get, I think, a lot of carries in Minnesota. We'll see what the RB2 situation is for me. It's always tough. Do I go Swift, who's getting 6, 7 catches a game? Do I trust Gibson, who got in the end zone last week? It is pretty tough. John Brown's been good for me. I need Ertz to start stepping up. Galladay will finally get on the field, despite me losing Cortland Sutton. But, overall, me and Chad, it's going to be a fun one. He's also got Ingram going Monday night as well. So this is going to be it's going to be a close one, and we both need it. And like I've said before, I'll say it probably a couple more times throughout the show. I say it every year, but we're already both 0-2. And the most important weeks of the fantasy football season are weeks 3 to 5 because it's divisional matchups and it's guys you'll never play again. So for some reason, me and Chad turn our seasons around, and I'm 7-6 or 8-5 at the end of the year, and so is he. It's going to come down to who won this game. So weeks 3 to 5 are crucial. We're both already 0-2. Makes this even more crucial for both teams. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, it's pretty. I think the teams are fairly mirrored. Obviously, you both have a guy playing on Monday night, so having that, captain in the week is big. But both of you guys have one, so It
It could
kind of
come down to
balances.
who outperforms at quarterback.
Yeah.
I mean, these are two of the highest scoring quarterbacks likely this week. It could come down
Yeah.
to that. Who knows?
I mean, and that could be said for a lot of matchups, just because I feel like this year, not to get off track, but this year quarterbacks have been pretty big in regards to fantasy wins. I mean, obviously you look at Kyler for me, he's been massive.
Yeah.
Look at Lamar Jackson for you, he's been pretty big. I mean, you kind of have Derrick Henry not struggling, but not putting up the fancy numbers you want. So Lamar's kind of been handling the load there. So it's pretty big for those guys. Those are probably my biggest people to look at in regards to who kind of dukes it out head to head and who edges the other. But outside of that, to me, the biggest kind of X factor for this entire matchup this week is going to be Derrick Henry. I mean, can he find the end zone this week? Is he going to actually score this week? They're playing a weaker Minnesota defense, but both these teams love to run. So is this going to be kind of a grinded out game where the winning team scores a total of 17 points and Henry kind of maybe can't find the end zone again or something stupid like that, and then he runs for 100, get you 10 points, but he should be having bigger games. To me, that's kind of the thing that I think he'll have a big game here. I think he kind of flips it around for himself here in a very crucial week 3 matchup for you. But if he can't get it done, I don't know if the rest of your team can kind of make up for his lack of production.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you look at Chad's team too. I think he's got some decent players. Like, what's Ingram's role going to be? Like, he's projected for 10. That's another big question mark. Does he get 10, or is he kind of limited where he only gets 6, 7 touches again? I like the receivers of Robinson, Moore, and Gallup, but it'll be a fun one for sure, especially with that Dallas Seattle game at 3 o'clock being a big one for him. I'd like to see Ertz not get outplayed by Goddard as well. But 0-2 versus 0-2, something's got to get for one of us. Hopefully, it's for the back-to-back defending champion here. What's the next matchup we got?
I want to add in, I hope you both tie, so it's still 0-2 and 1, 0-2 and 1.
Wouldn't that be great?
Next up, we have Chop Squad off to probably his best start ever with 1-1 against Jay, who is a surprising 1-1 as well.
Yeah, both teams 1-1. Both teams putting up some high-scoring weeks in the past, but looks like Trey's riding that Cam Newton train here. You could argue that he's got the best running back core in the league with Chubb, Jacobs, Taylor, and Kareem Hunt just chilling on his bench right now. Not going to start N'Keal Harry with the Cam Newton play. He's got Robbie Anderson and Corey Davis. I would maybe consider going N'Keal Harry over Corey Davis if you trust that matchup. But overall, Trey is projected to win by 2 here. What do you think of this one?
Yeah, sort of back to the Corey Davis thing quick. I mean, that's kind of my biggest thing, but that's a sneaky play just because no one's kind of paid him any mind in regards to the fantasy world. And with A.J. Brown being out for so damn long, he's the number one guy there. I mean, in regards to being a receiver, he's been targeted the most. He's had 2 double-digit games in weeks 1 and 2. Last week, yeah, you had 36 yards and a touchdown, so I don't know, you don't have a touchdown there. Your week's kind of dead. But he can kind of come out here, and I feel like against a secondary in Minnesota, if Tannehill's on fire, he's going to be the guy who is likely going to get most of that work outside of red zone stuff, which I think Jonnu Smith might get. But again, it's tough to kind of differentiate these two teams outside of the running back position, just because, I mean, you kind of have, it's just balanced. It balances itself out. I mean, Trey has solid running backs. Jay has a solid receiving core with Lockett, Kupp, and Diggs. So those two are kind of canceling each other out in a sense. But matchup-wise, I do like Jay's matchups a little bit more just because you have Pittsburgh going up against that lackluster Houston team in general. Their secondary hasn't been, I don't think, that bad. But I think I might be getting confused here. And the secondary has been awful, and the run defense has not been bad, which may be the case. But either way, Jay has a stake in both. He has got Connor and Big Ben. So if Big Ben can kind of get to a hot start, put them up big, who's coming in to kind of kill that clock? James Conner. So, I mean, those guys kind of go hand in hand this week, I feel. And that's going to be essentially the big part of his team. The rest of his team has solid matchups. I wouldn't say the best matchups possible. You've got Lockett in Dallas. It's going to be high scoring like people expect, but again, that offense over there has so many pieces. It just depends on who's getting hot. So
Yeah.
it's interesting for sure.
Yeah, and I think I'm never a huge fan of the quarterback running back on the same team. I know sometimes you can roll with it and it's avoidable, and sometimes it'll work, but especially in today's NFL with the running back get so many receptions. But I'm not the biggest fan of like a Roethlisberger Connor duo there. McKinnon does get the start for him with Mozart being out, and again Lockett in that high scoring Seattle Dallas game that's anticipated. I actually am a little bit different. I actually prefer Trey's matchups a little bit more. I think New England could put up a lot of points on the Raiders. I think Chubb could run all over Washington. That could get out of hand pretty early. Jacobs against New England, we'll see, but I think the Raiders are going to try to run the ball a lot, even still. So we'll see what happens. I think Jonathan Taylor, that Indianapolis New York Jets game, that could get out of hand early. And either way, I think Jonathan Taylor's going to get touches because if it's close, and we've seen that he'll go out there and catch the ball. And if it's not close, they're not going to carry the Naheem Hines with the ball. They're going to just give it to him. So that could be a blowout early with Jonathan Taylor getting a lot of work. But close matchup. Both teams 1-1. One team will move forward. The other team will fall down to 1-2. Both teams though looking pretty good early in the season. Next matchup is
We've got Play That Guitar to a W and Dave, and we've got Rob, which projection wise so far has been the worst matchup in regards to a bad beat on Dave's part. He's picked to lose by 10, 99 to 109.
yeah, and especially in half point PPRs, being projected for under 100, that's not too good. Now, there's sometimes you are, sometimes you're not, but usually most teams are projected over 100, and you start looking at guys that are single digit projections. Juju projected for under 10, Hooper under 10, Slayton under 10. Obviously, the kicker and defenses usually are as well, but believe it or not, Dave right now is riding that Herbert train. He thinks they're going to blow out Carolina pretty badly. He's got Eckler and Herbert in there. And for a second week in a row is going to be benching Drew Brees. He did pick up Sony Michel this week. Julio Jones is questionable. It's looking more and more likely like he won't play, I think, is the last I've heard, which could be big for the Chicago Bears. But he's got him on his bench right now. And that could end up being the difference maker here. But Rob does have two Chiefs, Kelsey and Watkins. Sometimes if you're playing a team that gives up a lot of points, that could be useful. But Baltimore's defense is good. And I don't find it likely that both of those guys end up being worth it. So honestly, right now, I know the prediction says Dave's going to lose by 10, but we'll see. Frank Gore, does that game get out of hand and he ends up with 3 or 4? He's got a stack in Cook and Thielen and a stack in Kelsey and Watkins. In a weird way, I might actually like Dave's side of the ball this week.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to kind of bet against Kelsey, Thielen, Cook, and Russell Wilson there, but at the same time, like you said, it's tough to get two guys going, much less, a receiver and running back, but just to have two guys kind of go off in one game, it happens, but to put my eggs in one basket like that, it may happen, you might get pinched into that. Or obviously Thielen's been pretty solid, so you're not going to play him or not going to bench him, for anybody else. So it's tough to get away from that. But I would agree. I do like Dave's matchups more. I mean, if Carolina were to put up more of a competitive game, which, they might. I don't know how well they're going to play without McCaffrey. Last week wasn't very good against – I don't remember who we played, to be honest, because it was just that bad. But, the Buccaneers. Yeah, the Buccaneers. They weren't too bad on the defensive end. That's kind of been the place they struggled the most. So if they can kind of wouldn't say keep Herbert and them in check, but kind of keep it close, it gives Dave more leeway with Herbert and Eckler. Hopefully Eckler can kind of find himself again with receiving the ball for once. But his matchups are solid. I think so are Rob's. But yeah, Dave, I would give Dave a slight edge on matchups, but obviously NFL.com does not agree with us.
And Dave and Rob obviously had Devontae Parker get him a 9.4, which not bad. Always want a little bit more than that off his 13.5 projection, but he's off to a decent start there. Both teams 1-1, 4th and 5th in the league currently, so that'll be a fun one as well. One team again goes to 2-1, the other's going to fall to 1-2. Next matchup, Justin versus Tyler, correct?
Yes.
And Justin is projected for a hot 114 this week, which I believe is the most in in the league. And he's already got he's got Fournette back there who had a really good game last week, Kamara. So he's got really good running backs in that stance. Higbee's been big last week. Ridley's going to be the number one with Julio out. Um, but of course, you got Tyler at 2-0, number one team in the league right now. Mahomes, Carson and Brown, Woods, Metcalf. This might be a high scoring shootout. And even though McCaffrey is on the IR, is going to miss a few weeks here, that was devastating for Tyler. I still don't think his running back situation is bad as long as Brown gets the touches because he does have another Ram there with Robert Woods. What do you think of this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I do agree with most things you said. I can pick out two places that I'd be skeptical for on both these teams. And funny enough, it's the both. I guess the RB2. They're in the RB1 slot at the top, which obviously doesn't make them an RB1. But their RB2s are kind of sketchy to me, just because Brown's injured. If he was injured with that, I believe it was his pinky. If somebody hits that wrong, is that really going to affect him? Is it going to knock him out of the game again? Is that going to cause a fumble just because of the pain tolerance or whatever? And the matchup there against Buffalo, I wouldn't say is fantastic, but this Rams line has been solid enough to where I think that these guys are not essentially matchup proof, but for the most part, you can trust them no matter who they play. So there, it's not bad. It's just kind of I guess you wouldn't say high risk, high reward. There's a lot of risk in playing him. He doesn't get the work, but he was getting it beforehand, and we'll see if that continues. With Justin too, having Fournette there, his performance last week was great. I mean, obviously he played Carolina, ripped off a massive touchdown run, but are they really going to stick with Fournette as some sort of a workhorse in this matchup? Probably not. I mean, they have Shady. They already stated that they like Rojo, so it's going to be kind of up in the air in regards to the kind of game script we see with Fournette. And if you can't guarantee that he gets 15 touches in this game, is it really worth playing him?
Yeah, and especially, and you're noticing a lot of quarterback running back stacks and a lot of running back wide receiver stacks, and that's what Justin's running out there with Fournette and Evans. But I'll tell you what, even after Fournette's big game last week, the coach, like you said, still came out and said, no, he's not, bar none, 100% the starter. So it makes it tough because Fournette's got all the talent in the world. He looked really, really good last week running the football, but we'll see if he sticks to that job. I think if Tyler, with McCaffrey being out for a few weeks here, if Tyler can somehow manage, 2 out of these next 3 weeks, or honestly, with how good his team is, if he could even just win 1 out of these next 3 weeks, and after week 5 be 3-2, I still think his team's going to be in pretty good position here. But he is projected to lose to Justin by 8. Justin is projected to be the highest scoring team of the week with 114. We move on to the last matchup, which is my ball, Zach Ertz, Kyle versus the Brady Bunch and Dana. Kyle has actually started off 0-2 this year. Dana's 1-1, but Kyle got a big start to the week with the running back from Jacksonville, James Robinson, putting up 27.9, and that has easily catapulted Kyle to the projected win with 109 to Dana's 99. Kyle's also starting recent pickup Ryan Tannehill this week at quarterback. Devontae Adams is doubtful, and he's projected for 0. So Kyle's projection will go up even further once he puts in a receiver, and it's possible Kyle's projected for 118, 119, which would mean Dana is projected to lose by over 20 points. Do you see that happening?
I don't. I wouldn't say that Dana is going to lose by 20 points. I mean, I don't mind his matchups by any means. So I can't sit there and say he's going to do that. But it's a tough hole to climb out of when on Thursday night the running back 2 on this team put up 27.9 points. I mean, it's going to be. I wouldn't say difficult for Dana's RB1 to get that because I believe Kenyon Drake's in a very good matchup this week. David Montgomery could kind of be used to kind of keep that offense off the field in Atlanta, so that could work in his favor. But it's the Monday night. Both of these guys have big plays in that game. It's Edwards-Helaire for Kyle, and you've got Mark Andrews on the other side for Dana. So I feel like this game for the most part will be within range for both of them. come Monday, just because matchup wise on the other side, Kyle's flex and David Johnson, who I am very high on still, playing against Pittsburgh, one of the tougher defenses in the league, is it's not going to be an easy task. But I'm now realizing too that Kyle has Tyreek Hill. For some reason, I missed that the first time around, but Monday is the game now. Like that's the game. Like, that's two of your.
Yeah.
That's one of the. I wouldn't say one of the few running back receiver combos you would want in the league. I feel like there's a couple. I mean, if you were to get Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones, somehow you're taking that. But there aren't many of those you want. That's probably the one you want. And if those guys kind of come out and are stifled by that defense, and Mark Andrews gets off to a pretty hot start, things should go one way for Dana. And obviously, if that kind of is flipped over for Kyle, it can go one way for him as well. But I do kind of seem like this is, again, kind of balanced for the most part. But Monday night, once Sunday games are said and done, we're going to kind of see what these teams need, which is always fun.
Yeah, and Dana's putting a lot of stock into Joshua Kelly, the running back for the Chargers, who has 35 carries in his first two games, had 23 a week ago. You'd like to see a touchdown out of him. He's only projected for 6. It's a little bit of a risky play, but if he really thinks he's going to get that much work again in a possible, who knows, blowout of the Panthers, but it is still a rookie quarterback with Justin Herbert going. It could be closer than we think, but he's expecting Kelly to get a lot of work there. And again, another running back receiver stack with Keenan Allen on Dane's team as well. So I think that Buffalo-LA game is going to be a big one, too. Does Josh Allen continue playing at a high level? Or the Rams' defense, which has looked pretty good these first couple of weeks, do they kind of keep Josh Allen at bay? So I think that's another one to look at, too. But Kyle's off to a really big start at 27.9 and looks to be projected to win. But before we wrap up, Crimmy, anything else going on this week? I know we haven't had any trades. We talked a little bit of the waivers, projections here, but we are now entering the 3 arguably standings-wise biggest weeks of the season. What's your thought process?
I mean, obviously for me, I'm just hoping I can pull one out. It's a pretty big game, like you said. It's probably, I would consider, game of the week in regards to our division, at least, just because one of us is going to become 3-0 and leading the division, and one of us is going to become 2-1, still fighting for that division's top spot, but having that tiebreaker for the rest of the season. So we're pretty close in points. We're pretty close in, obviously projections. So it's going to be big. I'm excited to see, how things go down tomorrow. At the same time, too, it's a big week for everybody, man. It's like I said, it's kind of a week where you lose this game, you go 0-3. For you specifically, what do? What moves do you make? Do you stick it out? Like a lot of things will come running through your mind, and you have to kind of make that. You don't have to really make that decision quickly, but it's once the division play kind of wraps up and we're getting into cross division play, the games still mean a lot, but in regards to seeding and playoffs and stuff, they don't mean as much. So like you said, these weeks are the biggest weeks to get wins. Then you're kind of not coasting, but you're still invested, you're still trying to win. You're running into teams that don't impact your standings as heavily as they would in regards to ties. And if you're in a hole, an 0-3 hole, a 1-2 hole, it's you've got 10 weeks left. And it may sound like a lot, but if you're 1-2, 0-3, and guys are 3-0 and have a good shot at winning, 8, 9, 10 games, you got to make up some ground pretty quickly.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how the divisions are laid out. Again, only 2 weeks in, it's going to get more interesting as we move forward. But 2 2-0 teams in Division 1, 2 1-1, and then 2 0-2. While in Division 2, there's only 1 undefeated team remaining, which being Tyler, and then 4 1-1 teams, and then Kyle on an island by himself as the only 0-2 team in Division 2. So interesting to see how it shakes out. Remember, the first 5 weeks are always divisional games before we do cross division play. So again, a nice little goal is to always be 3-2 heading into those cross divisional games, if not a little bit sweeter than that. So if you can get to that 3-win mark here in the first 5 weeks, not a bad place to be. But with that being said, this is a Sideline Fantasy Week 3 preview. It's another weekend. It's another great Sunday coming up. Can't wait to watch some football. Glad it's back, and we hope to. Hopefully, I win. Hopefully, most of y'all lose, especially in my division. Especially the teams that are 2-0 need to knock them down a peg, and we'll see what happens. So, have a good weekend, everybody.